Good morning, fight fans. Sunday Straight Talk is in session. I'm JFT, Jay's Fight Talk, and with me, as always, for Straight Talk is my No Punches Pulled co-host, the host of Liam's Fight Night Picks, Statman. Liam, how are we this Sunday morning?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. It was a limited weekend of fight sports, but a few good talking points have come up from New York. Kamara Usman done something we've not seen him do for 4 or 5 years in Atlanta. I mean, there's a couple of things to talk about, isn't
Oh,
there? So we'll,
don't
we'll,
get
we'll
me,
find a way to get through the next hour, I'm sure.
don't get me started. If Edmund Shabazian had a lost on points, you wouldn't have seen me this morning. I had a treble. I had Rose Namajunas on points. She was the favourite on points. I had Kamaru Usman at 5-1 on points, and I had Petrosky at 6-1 on points. So yeah, you let me down, Shabazian, by actually winning a fight for once. To be fair, I think he's on a 5-fight win streak. But anyway, look, let's go back to. We'll do it in sort of chronological order. We had a big boxing card from MSG, which was headlined by Richardson Hitchens and ferocious George Kambosos. But on the undercard, we saw Terramona doing what Terramona ordinarily does, which is comatose people, stop them fairly early. I mean, you can't really read much into that. What was your take on the short fight that Terramona had?
Look, Terra Moana, I won't do the Diamante and do it a third time, is a problem. And I know you can look at it and say, well, who's he for? But what he's done as an amateur, started as a pro, decided to go back as an amateur because we know he was offered money to go to the Olympics by the Australian Olympic Committee. Whatever. I don't agree with it, but they decided to do it. So that's none of his business. He went back and he had a stab in Paris, didn't work out.
Yep.
But he's come back and you're seeing gradual improvements. So when he fought Singh in March on the Cambosis Wiley card, he was taking quite a few shots. Yes, he won in the first round, but he was taking shots. Last night, when he was having shots thrown his way, he was stepping back out of the way and sort of readjusting himself before letting his hands go. Yes, it's a limited opponent, but all you can ask to see is improvements every time. He also wasn't smothering his work. Look, the finish was brutal. I want to give a shout out to the referee, David Fields, because he was obviously, his opponent was unconscious, rocked back against the ropes, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
The fact that Fields was able to see that and get in there before Temruana could land any more shots deserves credit, because we talk about referees all the time. Other referees wouldn't have seen that. There's a couple more punches and it's an uncomfortable situation. It was already uncomfortable enough seeing a guy completely unconscious whilst kind of still standing up because of the ropes. So give David Fields his credit as well. Look, there's no time to waste now with Temruana. This is fantastic that after getting pulled off of the Jaya Pattaya card because his opponent failed his medical, he was back out 6 days later. Full credit to Eddie Hearn and Matchroom for getting him over to New York and getting him out. However, we don't need any more puddings that, line buffet carts around their home cities as often as they like. He now needs to step up. I've seen people talk about Patrick Court or Nelson Haisa, who obviously fought each other on the Ipswich card last week. Someone of that level, there's no reason he shouldn't be getting fast tracked. And okay, if he beat Nelson Haisa, is it a fast track? No, but what it is a legitimate top 15 ranking thanks to the BS trinket that Haisa has with the WBO. Then you start looking at Moses Atalmas in the future, stuff like that. There's a good path for Terramwana. His size is a big thing as well. He's such a big dude. When he's actually in a fight where he can use his size to keep an opponent off of him, that's when we're going to see how good he is. He's got speed. He's got good hands. He's learning. But similar to what we said about Hooney before he fought Fabio last weekend, we don't want to see him with too many C and D level opponents. You want to see him come up. Give us a B level opponent next for Terra Moana, then we'll move him up again. He should fight 3 more times this year, or am I being unrealistic there?
No, look, he did all he could do last night, and props to the ref for making a decision and getting his opponent out of there. I actually I think he's one fight away from an All-Australian card topper against Hooney.
Now he is, yeah.
I think I'd like to see that fight. After Hooney taking a loss, I think it's a decent fight for Hooney. I'd like to see Tenmoana have one more. while Hooney has a bit of a break and maybe get them in against each other later on this year. I think that could do decent numbers in Australia with some kind of bauble on there, you know, a silver title or an intercontinental, or you know, it'll have some ranking belt attached to it. But you know, there's 1,000 cliches we could say. Can only beat was put in front of him, etc., etc. But we are seeing improvements. You know, whatever you might want to say about the lack of what's coming back at him, he's making all the right moves, and I'm seeing improvements in each fight. I wasn't that impressed by him. Not in his last fight. The fight before that, I thought he took too many. Even though he got, you know, he's dispatching people fairly comfortably, but he seems too comfortable to take shots. And I think as he goes up the level, that might cause him unnecessary problems.
And I think that's what it is, mate. He's got an eagerness and willingness to entertain, hasn't he? And me and Sam watched the Singh fight, and we liked the finish, but we both said he's taking too many shots. Look, again, throw all the cliches in the world you want are out there about the limited opponent. Let's make a comparison to Moses Atalma. Mike Balogun threw some shots against Moses in Glasgow a couple of weeks ago, and Moses answered them by getting a devastating knockout. Terra Moana has shown that he can actually defend himself from shots with cute movement and still find the finish. We're not going to know, are we, his level until he fights a Hooney, a Nelson Haiza, someone of that sort of step-up level. I mean, I'd say Hooney's above Haiza before anyone.
Yeah.
But you get what I mean. Those are the steps we need to see now. Very impressive. Again, credit to Matchroom for getting him out 6 days after the disappointment of what happened in Australia.
Yeah.
If he's look, the issue is, where's he going to land? Where's his next fight going to be? I wouldn't be adverse to seeing him come over to the UK, but Eddie, you need to remember you've got a UK stable. We need to see some more fights over here. Bring him over. Look, he's exciting. Like they done with Opataya. Opataya got brought over to the UK, didn't he? To build his star power and to make more people aware of him. And it's worked to an extent. Yes, he needs the unification fight next. Terra Moana can do that. Not only because there's a better quality of opponent that would rather travel to the UK to fight him than Australia, and it's easier to do, but also what it will do for his sparring opportunities, his training. Getting him over here. Joseph Parker done it from New Zealand, didn't he? Once he moves over to Europe, his career's gone on to another level again. Terra Moana should do something similar. He's at an age where he can't waste time. He hasn't got the Moses thing on his side of only being 20 years old and having all the time in the world. He's a little bit older. He's a little bit more seasoned. So let's see him kick on.
Yeah. Look, ultimately, he got the win. We're all talking about him. You know, he's making waves, albeit small to medium-sized waves. But if they bring him on properly, there are big fights out there for him, and they could, you know, he sells tickets. And you know, I'm excited to see what's next for him. I think he could be, you know, one to watch certainly in the next 12 to 18 months, given the right fights and the right progression.
Sorry, mate. Put it this way: we all say we prefer watching fights from home nowadays. I mean, if there's one fighter coming from overseas at the moment that's on the come up that I wouldn't mind seeing if he's on the right card, it is Terra Moana. There's some fighters you want to see up close. So I'm fortunate I seen Moses 3 times. If I don't get to see him again as he goes up the levels, I can always say I saw his debut and I was there for the first crap trinket he picks up when he beat Whack last summer. But that's the point. You can say that for certain fighters who you know are going to go places. Terra Moana has that potential as well. If he comes over and he's on a decent enough card, there's enough interest there for me to say I want to go and see him in an arena. And that's all you want in boxing, isn't it? It's people that grab your attention and make you want to watch.
Yeah, and he's definitely one, you know, fans' favourite. He's you know, he's yet to be in a boring fight. So we'll see as he progresses up the levels. It will become more difficult for him, and we will see how good he actually is. But look, as I've said, he's ticking all the boxes at the moment. He's winning emphatically. So yeah, it all points to an exciting future. Right, next on the card, Cuban Olympic gold medalist Andy Cruz. I mean, do I say absolutely hammered Hironori Mashiro? 5 rounds, beat the dog shit out of him. What's your take on Andy Cruz getting the stoppage victory last night, early hours of Sunday morning?
Look, we've been waiting for Andy Cruz to show this. We've been critical of he's still got too much of his amateur style. It's pitter-patter. When's he going to sit down on his punches? And then he rocks up to MSG. I'm I get in from doing a bar shift, and I think, I'll stick the boxing on. And I'm going to be honest, I said to myself, I'm going to give Andy Cruz 2 rounds here. If he's doing what he normally does, I'm going to bed. If he looks like he's going to put on a performance, I'll watch it. And he put on a performance, mate. I think I put on our chat we got with Sam at about 3:15 this morning. Andy Cruz, welcome to the pro game. And it finally feels like he's arrived last night. That was a beating. That wasn't just a victory. That was a comprehensive beating. His right hand was the mustard. He couldn't miss with it. And he finally looks like he's adapting to the pro game. He's sitting down on his punches more. There's more punch variety there. He's hitting harder. And look, he needed to make a statement anyway, regardless of Loma retiring or not. It was an IBF eliminator.
That was my next.
He needed to make a statement. Well, he's made a flipping statement now, and Matchroom can now say, well, here we go. This is our guy. He's going to come and fight for the vacant belt. And Andy Cruz finally looks like he's making the waves we hoped he would make. That's the best he's looked as a pro by an absolute mile. Fantastic performance.
Yeah, fantastic performance. I'm hoping that it is just coincidence, but it's strange that Keyshawn Davis misses weight and gets stripped. Lomachenko retires and Muratalla is elevated to the full champion. Andy Cruz comes out and has the best performance he's ever had. Is this him staking his claim as the next in line? I know it was an eliminator. I get the formalities, but what I'm saying is Andy Cruz has always sort of coasted. We know how good he is, and we know what he's capable of, but he's never really shown that. He gets a clearer pathway to a world title and has the best performance he's ever had. Do you think it's coincidence, or do you think it's something that shifted or clicked within his mindset? Because I do. I think it's something to do with the clearer pathway. I don't mean that like he was scared or worried, but we didn't know what was next, and he was sort of waiting for his shot. Now he sees a clearer pathway to his shot. He sort of just got rid of the guy that's standing in his way. That's how it felt for me.
I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. On the other hand, finally knowing what's going on with the IBF and Loma has made it a clearer path for him. Like you say, I mean, it was a final eliminator before what happened with Loma, so let's remember that. But on the other hand, we speak all the time about it takes even the best. Lomachenko is an enigma in how he transitioned from amateur to pro. A lot of people thought Andy Cruz was going to do something similar, but it just proves how much of an enigma Loma was, because Andy Cruz has taken time to adapt. I do think in a way now, what's this, 18 months as a professional athlete, he's now finally finding his feet in the pro game. Yes, okay, you could say, oh, it's convenient it's come in a final eliminator, but mate, I think it could have come at this point regardless of who the opponent was. The fact there's an eliminator there is just coincidental for me. I think he's finally got his feet under the table in the pro game. He finally trusts himself enough to sit down on his shots more, and he's going to start flying and doing what Eddie Hearn and people were talking about him doing, that we've kind of gone, oh, is he capable of it? I think this is us now getting to see it. Yes, the fact it's a clear path to a world title is no doubt helped light the fire, but it takes fighters time, doesn't it, to adapt and turn over, etc. And I think he's finally at that point where he's about to make the transition big time, like we expected him to do. We were all really excited when he finally turned over. We've been a little underwhelmed. Now it's the time that he's going to show us why we're all excited.
Do you think it's just a matter of time before he beats Muratalla, or do you think that is a difficult fight for him? I don't, but I mean, what's your take on?
I don't think it's difficult, and I didn't think it was before last night. Before last night, I was in the camp of it's a boxing performance from Andy Cruz. He probably puts on a decent 12-round schooling. Now we've seen that his power is starting to transition. You could see him getting him out of there, couldn't you, in the second half of the fight? I think, look, Keyshawn Davis doing what he done last week will probably do Andy Cruz a favour, because no one's going to be ramming Keyshawn down his throat for a while. Keyshawn needs to flipping reevaluate everything about himself and actually prove he's worthy of being in the ring. So that distraction of always being compared to Keyshawn Davis is gone for Andy Cruz now. Go and pick up the IBF strap in your own right. Go and pick up the WBO belt against Abdullah Mason, Sam Noakes, because we know that's been ordered. I'm sure we'll talk about it with Sam next week. There's a real path for him. Now, with Keyshawn doing what he done last week is probably the best thing for Andy Cruz, because it means he is Andy Cruz, the professional, in his own right, not Andy Cruz that had the 4 or 5 fights at amateurs with Keyshawn Davis. When are we going to see it as a pro? it's his own right now, and it can only help him.
Yeah, I think it was a breakout performance. I think it's announced him to a lot of people that weren't necessarily, who didn't necessarily not know who he was, but as we had seen his performances, had been somewhat overwhelmed. Thought he's one of those Olympians that's not going to transfer across to pros. Because what a lot of people don't realise, and I've taken a lot of shit for this before, but amateur and pro boxing are so different. Not different sports as such, but they are so different. The tactics, the way you have to fight, they are scored differently. Being an elite world class amateur does not necessarily mean you are going to be a world elite. Audley Harrison, or Fraudley as some people call him, was an Olympic gold medalist, turned over, got a massive contract. He was rubbish. I'm sorry, but in the pro game, he just did not have what it took. He had the awkwardness, the length, and the range to outscore and outpoint people in the amateurs. But when you haven't got the equalizer or can't take a shot, then your amateur skills will only get you so far. And a lot of people may have thought Andy Cruz, not that he was on par with Audley Harrison, but maybe thought he didn't hit as hard, wasn't consistent enough with his power punches, didn't sit down on them, didn't trade enough. As you'd said previously, bit more of a pitter-patter point scoring style. I think he's transitioned now completely, and I think he's sort of stepped out of his own shadow of the Andy Cruz amateur Olympian, etc. I think now he is, as you said, Keyshawn's moved on, so Andy Cruz now can cement himself at the top of this division, and I do believe it is just a matter of time before he cleans up.
Look, the best fight for Andy Cruz at this division is Abdullah Mason, and I think they'll do what they can to make it as big as possible. I think we may still be 18 months away from it, and there's no issue with us being 18 months away from that fight. Mason will progress. Cruz will become more comfortable. It's one of those. So Lewis Richardson made his pro debut in Ipswich last weekend. Obviously, GB's only medalist from Paris. And he said he knew there was going to be a difference fighting as a professional compared to what he'd done as an amateur, but you don't appreciate it in your training until you're there in the ring in an actual fight. And by his own admission, Lewis has said, look, I'm probably a year away. He said he wants to be really active, a year away from feeling like I've fully made the transition. And that tells you everything you need to know. Lewis won a European gold, an Olympics bronze, and I think a world championship silver. He was one of our best amateurs we've had in recent times. And he's saying, I know I'm going to need 12 months before I feel fully comfortable. Tells you everything you need to know. There was people saying that Lewis's performance wasn't that good last Saturday. Well, he won every round against an Estonian that came not to get stopped. That's the difference. Andy Cruz also had an opponent last night that wanted to fight. Yes, he fought the wrong tactics, the Japanese fighter, but he wanted to fight, didn't he? So that allowed Andy Cruz to showcase his skill set more. I agree. I think he does clear up this weight division. The toughest test is Abdullah Mason, but let's let them do their own journeys for a bit, pick up belts. I'm not talking about marinating it for too long, but get it to be at least a 3-belt unification. Make it worth our while. So whoever wins that fight, there's no real question marks over. Let them beat guys along the way. 18 months' time, that fight in America will be absolutely huge. And it will deserve to be huge because Abdullah Mason is doing his rise up the correct way as well. He's not doing the bullshit that we've seen from Keyshawn last weekend. He's letting his boxing in the ring do the talking.
Absolutely. Let that fight build up. Marinade is a word that is relevant, but have a structured plan. 3 or 4 fights each. Get some belts, and then let's have a massive unification fight at MSG or somewhere like that. I definitely think their paths are destined to collide. I also think, and I do think he'll fight Keyshawn Davis when he's cleaned up and moves up. I think that fight's inevitable, but we don't know what's going to happen with Keyshawn Davis. He's been a bit of a dick, and he's sort of wasted a lot of his hard work over the last 12, 18 months by being a bit of a dickhead last week. That's the only thing I can say, really.
Mate, that's the politest thing we can say is he's been a dickhead. I mean, look, Andy Cruz and Keyshawn Davis will fight at some point because of the narrative from the amateurs. That fight's there. That fight sells itself. It's happening. But there's no immediate clamour for it. Before last weekend, we were saying if Keyshawn wins on Saturday and Cruz wins this weekend, why don't we make that fight now? Well, that's obviously gone now. And I think it will benefit Andy Cruz. It will allow him to forge his own path without being attached to Keyshawn. That's the best thing for him because I know we were guilty of doing it, but it's because the narrative's there. We can leave that narrative alone now for a while and allow the talent that is Andy Cruz to become a talent for himself.
Yeah, it's an exciting next few months for Mr. Cruz, and I think I'm more excited now off the back of that performance. I was expecting another easy points win for him, or possibly late stoppage, but he turned the heat up and got his opponent out of there. So it's exciting for him. Let's move on to the main event. Morning, Dan. Thanks for joining us. Hitchins Kambosos was always terrible matchmaking. We haven't covered it. We're about to, but thanks for that. I think me, you, and Sam had all said that. Certainly, you were very vocal about Kambosos probably not deserving this fight off the back of recent performances, and I think we were all proven right. I think I'd gone for a 10th round stoppage, but that fight wasn't really close for me, and I don't know whether you've got a different take on it, Liam.
No, mate, I haven't got a different take on it. Look, Kambosos was back to the scene of the crime, the scene of his greatest triumph, beating Teo, wasn't he, on last night? And we said in the week when we were chatting about it that if he can use the energy of being back in MSG for what he done against Teo, then there's a chance he could pull off the upset again. But I just didn't see it coming, mate. Look, what he's done since beating Lopez is only legitimately win one fight, and that was against Wiley. I know he got the nod against Maxi Hughes, but we all know he lost that. He lost both fights against Haney convincingly, and Lomachenko stopped him, for God's sake. And look, we love Lomachenko, but he doesn't stop many people, does he? If you want to find one flaw in the Matrix, is Loma wasn't, capable of stopping people once he moved up in weight. So it was a bullshit fight. I mean, look, we said before, Eddie Hearn's dream was to make Paro against Kambosos in Australia. And yes, I still would have carried the same energy of being Paro Kambosos, but at least there was more of a narrative there, an all-Aussie battle, New South Wales against Queensland, sell it however you want. It just didn't make sense. And within 3 minutes, Richardson Hitchens' right hand was like dynamite. Kambosos' head was his main form of defence. And you go in, for God's sake, because Hitchens isn't really known as being someone to get people out of there. For God's sake, if I close my eyes and open them again with 1 minute left in the 12th round, it's going to look exactly as this first round looks. What impressed me last night was Richardson Hitchens moved through the gears. He showed variation. He started working to the body. Sergio Mora talks about how they obviously looked at the Lomachenko tape. And to be fair, they probably did, because Lomachenko put a lot of money in the bank with body shots, didn't he? And that's how he got the stoppage in the 10th round, I think it was.
11th.
Yeah, down the back end of the fight, wasn't it, anyway? And Hitchens done the same last night. Lots of head work, but lots of body work. And I thought at the end of round 5, he was going to have Kambosos out of there, because Kambosos was looking busted up. He was looking tired. There was nothing coming back. The placement on the body shot was fantastic. But Kambosos' career is an anomaly because of what he done against Teofimo Lopez. Anything other than that, okay, Teofimo Lopez and Lee Selby when he came over to the UK in the Eliminator and beat Selby. Those are his 2 standout moments. Everything other than that sort of shows that he's a fringe world level fighter. So do we get too carried away by what Richardson Hitchens has done? No, because I expected him to do it. The impressive element is he got a stoppage. A lot of us, I know you said a stoppage, but you said, I'm saying that because I think Kambosos has gone rather than I expect Hitchens to do it, if that makes sense. He proved to us last night that, okay, maybe he is capable of kicking on to another level, but
you can't read much from it, can you?
That was a glorified spar in the end for Hitchens. He probably did have tougher spars, and it's a cliche to say he probably did get tougher work in training camp. Kambosos was a busted flush from round 4 onwards, and the only thing that kept him in there was his warrior mentality. And look, you can say that with Kambosos because he's proven it time and time again. He is a legitimate warrior. The fact he made it through both Haney fights shows that. But that's him done at the top table. We don't need to see Kambosos doing these fights again.
No, I agree. What do you think's next for both? We'll start with Hitchens. What do you think's next for the world champion?
Teo.
Do you think so? Do you think that's the fight they'll make?
If Papa Lopez can keep his mouth shut and let his son get into a fight, then yes. And I think it's a good fight, mate. I think
Yeah,
it's a
I do.
good fight. Tio Lopez has the sort of style that someone like Hitchens will thrive off of. It will encourage him to come forward. It will encourage him to do his best work. But if Hitchens is slightly off his step, then we know Lopez can box for 12 rounds. That's where the fight stands. I think it's a fantastic style matchup. And it's for 2 belts as well. Look, IBF, WBO, we don't care about the belts too much. But if you can bring 2 of the belts together, then why not do it? Kambosos, I agree with Dan. His pride and his ego and what he's done over the last 4 years aren't going to let him drop back to a certain level. He also shouldn't need to keep fighting. We know he made enough money from the Devin Haney 2 fights in Australia, from the Lomachenko fight. He shouldn't need to keep fighting. There's no harm in retiring. Look, given us one of the best boxing moments from an underdog in the last 5 or 6 years, what he done against Tio, undoubtedly, but he doesn't need to keep going on. He's only going to get himself beaten by up-and-coming fighters if he carries on for me. Don't know what you think.
I mean, I thought maybe they might do an all-Australian card and put him and Paro on at some stage in the next 6 months. I think we will see I don't think he'll retire. I think he'll want to go out with a win, or at least go out with a big fight at home. I think he should retire. He takes a lot of punishment in his losses, or has taken a lot of punishment in his losses. And I wouldn't want to see him go on too long and get badly hurt. He's not getting sort of flatlined in his defeats, but he is taking a heck of a lot of shots because he's tough. And I don't want to see him get beat until he gets knocked out. When he could, like you say, walk away. He's got a lot of money and doesn't need to fight to pay his bills.
That's the thing, mate. How many times do we see it? Fighters with not the greatest of skill sets, but everyone sort of has a soft spot for them because they wear their heart on their sleeve. They never give up. They're tough. They're strong. It takes a lot to get rid of them. Look, Kambosos has still never been stopped by a headshot. He's had 2 body shot stoppages. I know you're clutching at straws, but that's the thing. He's still, again, yes, he was getting beaten up last night, but Hitchens had to go to the body to get him out of there, didn't he? Look, you don't want to see him get beaten up. I think he will fight again. If he fights Liam Paro in Paro's comeback fight, Paro beats him quite convincingly, probably on the scorecards, unless Kambosos now is completely shot and his punch resistance is gone, which is possible with how much damage he takes. But it's not a fight we want to see. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to see Paro and Kambosos if Paro was still world champion. So it doesn't make me, last night makes me want to see it even less, if that makes sense. So, look, Kambosos' dad isn't, yes, he's a gobshite, but he also has always looked after his son, if that makes sense. He's not going to be like your Bill Haney's and your Papa Lopez's that are pushing their kids to carry on, think about the money. He can be realistic with his son. And he's always said, my son doesn't have the greatest skill set, but what he does have is a heart and a belief that will take him places. And that's why he got to where he's got to. His dad should have a word in his ear now and say, look, son, we've made bank. You've achieved more than you ever could have dreamed of. Let's go out now before everyone forgets about that and we start losing fights we shouldn't lose, because that's the reality now. And I hope his dad can do that to him, because his dad hasn't changed. His dad's remained a bit of a gobshite, but he's also remained level-headed about his son's ability, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Dan Liam's pretty much said that, and I've agreed with you. I think he should walk away with, I won't say shot, but I'd say shot at a certain level.
At the top end, at where he wants to be.
Which is what we've said. His dad is lucky that he's not locked up, to be fair, because he stuck a right hand on Hitchens' trainer at the presser.
You're right, mate. Yeah.
There was absolutely no need for that. Stand up, puff out your chest. It's all bravado. Ultimately, ye's two aren't fighting, so there's no reason for you to get angry like that, right? I'm a strong believer in words of wind. I know they say sticks and stones. Considering what I've done in my life, now that I'm, putting myself out there to the public, I get a lot of hate. I get a lot of shit about my life, things that I've done in my life. We're not going to dredge them all up now. But I'm a strong, it takes a lot to get me to get under my skin.
Yep.
So when you're in that position, I don't see the point in throwing shots. His dad threw an unwarranted punch. He's lucky he didn't get arrested for that. to be honest. And that's not me saying he deserves to be arrested. I'm not saying that.
Especially in
But,
New York, especially where they were as
mate,
well. Context of where they were.
the New York State Athletic Commission are one of the strictest commissions in the world. For me, it's a gentleman's sport, and I'm not being misogynistic when I say that. I'm just using that I don't know what the alternative is for women, but look, that the sport of boxing is about class. You can talk shit and venom and spite and stuff, but it's got to be words. The fight happens in the squared circle between the two combatants, not outside the ring. And I just think Cambosis' dad gets a little bit too involved at moments, and we saw that on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, look, everyone loves trash talk. Well, I say everyone. We understand trash talk. We
It's got a place, hasn't it? It's got a place.
Understand selling a fight. There's no problem with that. But it's when it crosses over the line and the teams are getting involved and it becomes physical outside of the ring. Look, let's call this fight week for what it was. The scenes at the press conference, the weigh-in was just them talking smack in each other's faces. Look,
yeah.
Security would have jumped in as soon as it got physical, but that was just them talking smack. And Eddie Hearn's absolutely right to just stand over, smile on his face, because the guys are just selling the 500 tickets that are left inside the theatre, if that makes sense. But the scenes at the press conference where Hitchens himself and someone in Hitchens' team are picking up chairs and going to throw him, we don't need that. That's where the line crosses in boxing. But look, mate, I agree with you. His dad, unfortunately, and look, any father with their son will become emotionally invested, and I'm not using it as an excuse. That is what a lot of it looks like with Cambosis Senior.
I've been a screaming dad. Sorry to cut you. I've been stood on the sidelines screaming, and acting like a dick, and then having to check myself at intervals. And I believe that sometimes you've got to check yourself.
That's the first time for me, and I stand to be corrected, that Cambosis Senior has got physical. He's always, like I said, his slanging matches with Bill Haney before both fights were cringeworthy, but they were just slanging matches. It was Bill that tried to make it physical in that case. He's always stood on guard. He's always stood up for his son. Something flips on Friday. He won't be proud of it, but it sometimes happens, doesn't it? One other thing I do want to say about it, and it's mainly to the Aussies. A lot of you that were saying about the count with Hooney, he was up at 9. Why didn't the ref let him carry on? Cambosis was up at 8 yesterday, but the referee didn't let him carry on. That's what you mean. That's that snapshot decision a referee has to make. Hooney didn't look right last Saturday, did he? And if he was allowed to carry on, he was going out.
He'd have got flatlined.
And Cambosis looks even worse. Yes, you could say it's a body shot. Could he have been allowed to go on? But what happened as soon as Michael Griffin went like that, Cambosis fell on him, didn't he, with the pain he was in? He literally fell on the referee like, hold me, I need someone. So, again, just because you're up before 10 doesn't mean you're obliged or allowed the fight to go on. You have to be in a position to defend yourself and look comfortable. And Cambosis definitely wasn't last night, just like Hooney wasn't the week before.
No, it was the right decision to stop that fight. It was the right decision at the right time. And I'm excited. I'm excited for what's next for Hitchens. I hope they make the TO fight. I believe that.
Free agent. He said he's going free agency, mate. If you notice, Eddie, he didn't go over to Eddie at the end of the fight. So when Eddie got into the ring, there was no embrace between them. There wasn't too much other than the pleasantries when they were being interviewed together. His contract was given to him by Matchroom off the back of giving him an opportunity against Paro. Yeah. So he's now a free agent. So does that make making the TO fight easier? Probably, because it goes on Top Rank, or it goes on a Saudi card, or if it goes to purse bids, it may end up on a Matchroom card. But the reality is, the normal things that Lopez likes to pull because fighters are in different places is gone with Hitchens, because he's come out straight away and said, I'm going to the free agency market. Anyone can have it. Fantastic attitude. It's the attitude you want to see.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't give a shit what promotion it's on. Either way, I'll be there.
I want to watch it.
And we'll be watching and doing a live watch along. Right, that's it for the boxing. Then we'll quickly touch on the disappointing UFC card from Atlanta. I was so excited for this card. It had some great matchups on it, but it just flattered to deceive, really. Every fight pretty much went to decision. I mean, don't get me wrong. As a purist, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed watching it, and I rewatched it again this morning, just in case I missed anything. I didn't.
You hoped it would be
my
better second time.
Yeah, I mean, my standouts. I'll give you my standouts. Malcolm Wellmaker. I
Yep.
believe he's one to watch. Bantamweight. Chris Matinho's not world class, I would say. He got his shot off coming in short notice against Sugar Sean O'Malley and got pinged around, didn't he, for a couple of rounds. And he's tough, but Wellmaker's story is fantastic. He was working as a welder up to a couple of months ago, got a short notice fight, got a 50 grand bonus that enabled him to quit his job, and here he is on the prelims of a massive card from Atlanta, Georgia. We saw two old timers, I want to say, both considerably younger than me, Court McGee and Michael Chiesa. I actually talked to Court McGee on social media. He's an advocate for recovery. He was a heroin addict.
Yep.
He's now, I think it's something mental, like 7,000 or 9,000 days sober. But we interact on social media. Anybody that knows my story knows that I too am a recovered addict. So I've got a soft spot for Court McGee. He was on the wrong side of a 3-round decision last night, but it wasn't the greatest of fights to watch. I mean, Court McGee's a great wrestler and grappler. Michael Chiesa's a jiu-jitsu black belt. We didn't see a lot of that last night. There was a lot of feinting, a lot of threatening takedowns, a lot of posturing. Yeah, well, it was a tough watch. We then saw the main event of the prelims, which saw Rodolfo Bellato and Paul Bear Jew Craig square off. This again didn't get off to a great start, and then we saw. I thought it was a legal up kick.
So did I.
I thought you had to have both knees on the ground, and Bellato had one, and Paul Craig kicked him. But then it was I'm not going to say I think he was faking it, but as he's going down, he looks at the ref and goes, "Huh?" and then proceeded to close his eyes, scramble like he was trying to take Miss McDonald, the referee. Yeah, I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure, Bellato. I'm not sure, brother. Your acting is not the best.
Bellato has Aljamain Sterling posters up on his wall. That's all I need to say on that.
It didn't look good, did it?
So I saw it after the fact. So I heard Paul Craig was a no contest, and I saw Bisping's tweet saying, "What do you think about what just happened in the Paul Craig fight?" I was like, that's enough. You see, sometimes all you need. So I went back and watched it, and look, we're never going to accuse a fighter of play acting or faking. Let's say it looks suspicious. Let's leave it as it looks suspicious. And it's a shame for Paul Craig because the momentum Paul Craig's had, he always then seems to get a bit of momentum and then hit a roadblock. And this is another one, unfortunately.
They'll have to do it again, won't they? They'll have to make them two fight again, I think.
As soon as they can for Paul Craig's sake.
Yeah, and then the main card. So we saw Umar Sy drop to his first loss, the unbeaten Frenchman, against Alonzo Menefield. Again, a lot of posturing. It was obvious that Sy was weary of Alonzo Menefield's right hand. Menefield, for me, is a bit of a one-trick pony, so I don't know why he wasn't moving. Why Sy, it's easy for me to say this, but why he didn't move more to his left? He just consistently moved to his right, which is playing on to what Menefield wants to do. He didn't try barely any takedowns. He sort of gave that fight away for me.
Yeah.
Not much you can say on it, really, is there?
Mate, but the thing is, there's not a lot you can say on any of the fights. And so there's been 2 UFC fight nights this year in front of crowds that we've been excited for. First one was UFC London. Second one was this one. And what have both got in common? They've not delivered. They've had potential to deliver, and they've not delivered. And look, we say that fight nights need to be moved out the apex and get back in front of crowds. Unfortunately, you move them in front of crowds and they produce cards like we got in London and cards like we got last night. Dana's just going to keep them in the apex. Why waste the promotion on going to arenas, on selling tickets when they're not delivering? I mean, I'm like you, mate. I love my MMA. I'm a purist. I can appreciate what we saw in those fights. However, the whole main cards go into decisions. even for a purist, it was tough, wasn't it, mate? You get into
it was a tough watch.
Something happened. Sorry, mate. I'll let you carry on with your summary.
Middleweight, we saw Mansour Abdul Malik continue on his unbeaten streak. He's 9-0 now. A decision against Cody Brundage. Brundage is dangerous. I think we've seen him perform better. It felt, right, last night, felt like every fight, they were all fighting scared of being knocked out. That's the feeling I got. And obviously, you've got to be wary of getting knocked out. But it's like they were all concentrating too much on getting knocked out. I mean, another example, what's happened to Cody Garbrandt, man? Where's the Cody Garbrandt, right? One of the best performances I've ever seen is when he beat Dominic Cruz, right? He outfought a guy that was out-fightable, if that makes any sense. Stutter step footwork, random movement, moonwalking, shuffling, bolo punching, stance switching. Where's that Cody Garbrandt gone? I don't believe he's ever recovered since TJ Dillashaw, since the TJ Dillashaw loss. Not just from the stoppage. I believe it was more to do with the fact that they were from the same camp. They'd sort of evolved together, and I just think that it took something from his ego, and I think that it's Cody Garbrandt is a confidence fighter, and I think once that confidence has gone, he has, I don't want to say average ability, but not much further than above average ability for me, and he again dropped a decision loss. I think he has lost 4 of his last 6, I want to say. And at one point, he was the unbeaten bantamweight world champion. I don't know where he goes from here because, you know, Raoni Barcelos is not a massive name. He's not somebody that you know, the UFC are screaming about world title shots for yet. And you know, a fight that was winnable for Cody Garbrandt. Oh, he's joined us here as our No Punches Pulled co-host. Yeah, I agree. We've just been speaking about Kambosos. We haven't got to Usman yet, but yeah, I picked him. I got him at 5-1 on points, Sam. You'll be happy to know. But Petrosky let me down on my treble by losing against Shabazian. But we'll catch up with you on Tuesday night. Thanks for joining us. Next one, we saw Edmund Shabazian beat Andre Petrosky over 3 rounds. Shabazian has dramatically improved because we saw him drop a lot of he lost 3 in a row, I think, or possibly 4 in a row after coming through. Thug Rose gets back in the win column against Miranda Maverick. She did get, I mean, for me, Rose, I had it 1-1 until the knockdown, but I don't think it was a knockdown. I think you will see that Miranda Maverick injured her leg. Yeah. And I think a leg went from underneath, and I don't know what your take was on that, but
sorry about that. That's my mum out shopping, and she wants to know a few bits I want. And I was like, yeah. Anyway, Thug Rose done Thug Rose things, didn't she? Even when she loses fights, she's always competitive and involved in them. So it is one of those where last night it was another competitive fight.
How rude.
It was another competitive fight, wasn't it, from Thug Rose? I do agree the opponent was hindered by that leg injury. Her leg did go from underneath her. She couldn't transfer her weight, could she? But it was one of those fights where you always thought Rose was going to win, if that makes sense. It's just the injury maybe made that last round a bit more comfortable for her.
Yep, and then the main event, I picked Kamaru Usman on points, and Kamaru Usman did Kamaru Usman things. Wrestle fuck the shit out of Joaquin Buckley. What do you think of that performance? Is Usman back, or is Buckley just not that good?
Combination
Mixture
of both.
Yeah.
Look, Kamaru Usman has the potential to do what he done last night to anyone. That's the reality. If Kamaru Usman wants to spend 5 rounds having a cuddle on the canvas, wrestling, grappling, etc., he will. And that's what he done last night because he is an elite ground fighter. It doesn't matter what point he's at in his career and what's happened to him. If he's in a position where you allow him to get a fight to the ground and be in control on the ground, he will do that for 15, 25 minutes, however long the fight is. Buckley just had no answers. But not only did Buckley have no answers, his corners had no answer for him in between rounds. So they're not giving him the instructions on how to defend himself, or if he finds himself on the floor, how to change position or how to give himself breathing space. It was, I said I felt like Hitchens and Kambosos was going to be close your eyes and it's the same in the last round. That's pretty much what this fight was. It's not taken away from what Usman done. And for us and for Sam that loved watching our MMA, we appreciated I say we appreciated the 25 minutes. We appreciated what Usman done. Maybe wanted a bit more from him, but we appreciated it. But you can't say Kamaru Usman's back off the back of what he's done.
No.
He's never lost the ability to do that. He's always had that there. But it just is another reminder that if you go to the ground with Kamaru Usman, you best be able to play with him. Otherwise, he's going to flatten you out and do what he wants to do.
There's only Hamzat for me that he doesn't do that to, because his wrestling's good, but they did it at 185, not 170. I think it's a different fight at 170, Hamzat and Kamaru. I think it's a lot closer.
Yeah, look, Kamaru isn't big enough, especially for his strengths on the ground at 185. No. That's what it is. That fight at 185 last night, he probably can do that for 3 rounds, and then he's blowing because of the cardio, the extra weight, etc. Kamaru is best where we saw him last night. The question is, what does he do next? Because, yes, he's won impressively, but could you say what he done last night warrants him getting a big fight next? No.
I mean, he's top 5. I don't know who's I don't know who's... let's have a look. I don't know who is...
it's difficult, mate, because, look, that's as dominant a 25 minutes as Kamaru's had in probably 4 years. But it's still not enough for me to say, oh, yeah, I want to see him with one of the top 5 in the division, because he doesn't, it's not there for me. I needed to see a bit more, but that is, also the downside of being such a ground heavy fighter.
Okay, so above Kamaru Usman, we've got Leon Edwards, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Sean Brady, Bilal Muhammad, and Jack Della Maddalena. Now, for me, I was going to say Ian Machado Gary for Kamaru Usman next, because they're 6 and 5. I'm not averse to seeing him fight Leon Edwards again, with Leon Edwards coming off a loss.
The 4th time.
Yeah. I don't want to see him fight Rakhmonov. I think Rakhmonov needs to fight for the belt next. Or what about Sean Brady against Kamaru Usman? 2 wrestlers.
It's Brady or Bilal for me. Because Bilal...
Brady or Bilal.
But Bilal isn't obviously going to get straight back in with Jack, because that's Shavkat. That's the direction that's going in.
Yeah.
So what do you do with Bilal Muhammad? You could say Sean Brady deserves a shot at the last champ after what he done to Leon Edwards, so you can make that argument. But for me, Bilal fighting Kamaru Usman and potentially beating Kamaru does more for him cementing his credentials of getting another shot to get his belt back, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
Bilal and Kamaru, as much as I don't enjoy watching Bilal, he sends a glass eye to sleep, is the logical fight that makes sense. And we know the UFC make the logical fights. It's not like boxing where you talk about logic and then they do something so left field you don't even know what they've done. Dana Hunter and the team make the logical fights. 2 former champions, Bilal and Kamaru Usman, probably... The thing is, I think they do it as a 3-rounder on a pay-per-view rather than a 5-round main event on a fight night. And that's probably not what it deserves, if that makes sense. It probably does deserve a 5-round billing. So it's a tough one, but that makes the most sense because of the former narrative. They're both former champions that want to get back to the top.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm happy to see Usman back in the win column. I like Kamaru. I've always been a fan of Kamaru's. Joaquin Buckley, I think, is good, but I don't think he's good enough to win a world title, and that was proven last night. Kamaru took him down fairly comfortably throughout that fight. He didn't look in any real trouble at all in that fight, and Kamaru Usman is not the fighter he was, so that for me tells you that, look, Joaquin Buckley got a lot of hype off the back of knocking out Kasanganay with that spinning back kick, so that's helped. It's furthered his brand, and it's got him some big fights. He'll go back down the rankings. I think he remains at 7. Kamaru stays at 5. On to the next. I'm excited to see what's next for both of them. I think we've got a massive card next week. We've got Jamal Hill fights Kalal Roundtree with Curtis Blades and Fiziev on that card. And then the following week, it's International Fight Week. And we have Charles Oliveira and Ilia Topuria headlining a massive card. That's it from me. Have you got anything you want to add, Liam? I think you've got something to add.
Yeah, I've just looked at that fight card next week. It's on prime time in the UK. Main card starts at 8 o'clock.
It is.
So let's take the positives. We've got look. Let's not jinx another fight night card that we're saying is going to deliver, but it's got potential, especially the main 3 fights. You've got Blades, you've got Rafael Faraz, the main event, Hill and Roundtree. Those 3 fights alone should deliver, and it's prime time for us over in the UK.
And it's got Mohammed Usman. It's got Kamaru's brother on the heavyweight, Mohammed Usman.
Kicking off the prelims, yeah.
One of my son's favourite fighters, well, my son's not Welsh, but my grandson is. Oban Elliott fights next week against Koi Seok Hyun. So, yeah, stay tuned. You will catch myself, Liam, and Sam on Tuesday night for episode 42, I think it is, of No Punches Pulled. Yeah. Liam's Fight Night Picks will be back, and I think we will be back on Thursday for Straight Talk rather than Sunday mornings. We'll be back next Sunday morning. I think this is going to be a regular thing, but thank you, everybody, for joining us. Dan, Sam, anybody else that's tuned in, we appreciate you. Be sure to follow Liam on socials at Liam_Tully9. You can catch his show, Liam Fight Night Picks, over on Jay's Fight Talk YouTube channel. Liam, thank you very much for joining me. Appreciate you. Have a great Sunday. Take it easy.